Welcome to WTA Weekly. It's Madrid Open. I am your host, Nick Carter, and I'm here very grateful to be joined by the very reputable Vansh Vermani. Vansh, how are you doing this fine day?
Reputable is an interesting word, Nick, but I'm really happy to be here to talk about Madrid because it's been exciting so far.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I do mean it as a good reputation, Vansh, don't worry. Despite people who might knock you down for having incorrect predictions, I just find it hilarious.
Hey, at least they care, so that's a good thing.
If something like that. We'll call it caring in Twitter's own special way.
Yeah.
We will be taking your questions and showing your comments on the live stream. So if you're watching us on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube, go for it. We will definitely we'll show any comments and questions you have on screen. This is not just about us having a chat. It's about you having a talk with us as well. But starting with the most pressing question of the night. Yes, I have. I'm glad someone noticed. I make an effort for you guys. I make an effort.
You look good, Nick.
And that's the ego stroking I need today. Right. So what I thought we would do today is kind of see where we are in the draw and talk through the big stories that have been happening. And what I thought would be interesting is going from kind of the number 2 end of the draw up to the number 1 end rather than the other way around, because usually we start to the top and work our way down when we do kind of draw analysis and look at kind of the big stories that have come building into the first 3 rounds of Madrid, because the first 3 rounds of the women's draw are now complete. And round 4 begins tomorrow. Are you okay with that idea, Vansh?
Yeah, sounds good. First 3 rounds are done, so it's a good time to recap that.
Yeah, let's recap it. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. It is of Wikipedia, but it's going to be of the women's draw in Madrid, and we're going to have a look at that. So hopefully you guys can see this all right on screen. But there you go. So here we go. First section. We had some interesting results here. I think it's appropriate to start here, not just because it's kind of one end of the draw, but also probably because it contains the biggest story of Madrid, I would say, in the women's draw. Mirra Andreeva, the now 16-year-old, turned 16 yesterday and celebrated by beating Magda, Linette, the number 17 seed, top 20 player, Australian Open semi-finalist this year. Made her name by beating Jabeur in round 1 of Roland Garros last year, so no slouch. Clearly also beating Vondrousova, who's a former Roland Garros finalist. And so what are your thoughts on Mirra Andreeva, and how does she have the game as a 16-year-old to get her to the 4th round of a 1000 tournament?
Yeah, it's been a very impressive run and rise for her this year. She's the junior. Obviously, she played in the Australian Open Juniors this year, and I had heard a little bit about her then. She was kind of on my radar as a potential player who could do some big things, but this happened very quickly, much quicker than I had actually expected. And she's obviously carrying a lot of momentum. And when you win 2 WTA ITFs, albeit at the W60 level, it's still there was still quite some good competition in there, and she beat some good seasoned veterans, I would say, in those 2 weeks. And she's got now 3 wins under her belt here in Madrid. And what struck me is she has a pretty complete repertoire in her of her game. I mean, I really like her backhand. I think she does some great things with it, both in terms of absorbing pace and redirecting. But also she has a pretty versatile forehand. I like the loopy forehand that she has on clay. Just buys herself a little bit of extra time. She doesn't look very rushed. And in these altitude conditions, she's really able to hit through them and I think impose herself. And she obviously has nothing to lose against a lot of these top players. And particularly against Fernandez, you could see Leylah was quite stressed in some of the early stages of the match because she was really bringing in the heat. was Mirra on both ground strokes. And so far, she's sort of been able to play with that fearless abandon in the last 3 rounds. And it's been impressive to watch. I'm interested to see how the Sabalenka match goes. That's obviously a much bigger test. Sabalenka being the 2021 Madrid Open champion, and of course, the best player this year in terms of the race. And so that's going to be certainly a different test than Linette. A lot more firepower, but it's been interesting to see, and she has quite a cool personality as well. It's talking about how beautiful Andy Murray looks in that Tennis Channel post match. That really, I think, did the rounds on the internet. So that was funny.
Yeah, the Andy Murray fandom's now adopted her officially. Like that tweet kind of, I think once it got round a few of the bigger Murray fan accounts, it really got kind of momentum. And I think, I don't know if you saw Murray's tweet in response when he actually retweeted the video, and he said she needs to get her eyes fixed, which I thought was just a brilliantly Andy Murray response to that whole thing.
Classic Andy Murray on Twitter.
Oh yeah. Nico's highlighted an interesting comment. I hadn't realized that Haddad, Mayar, and Fernandez were the top 2 ranked lefties in the WTA tour right now.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. Yeah, both are pretty good wins. I mean, it's even Haddad Maia, who's been pretty consistent, I would say, week to week on the WTA, and obviously made a 1,000 final just last year. So
yeah, I would say like stuff. So I didn't manage to watch all of the matches. Like, definitely she seemed to frustrate Fernandez. Haddad Maia, she just seemed to absorb everything the Brazilian threw at her. Her resilience was incredible. Same against Linette. Just able to rally with both players and then frustrate them into making errors. I agree with you that overall, it's all around pretty solid already by 16. The backhand is worth noting as well. Almost very complete. The forehand seems to work very well on clay. I'd be interested to see how it does against an elite hard court player, and what, if she is able to hit with variety, because at the moment it does remind me a little bit of the Gauff forehand, maybe in terms of the loop. I'm not an expert enough to notice grips or swings or anything like that. But in many ways, I was comparing it to these results to Gauff's run at Wimbledon in 2019 at a similar age. This might arguably be more impressive, even if the tournament's not as high profile.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember that Gauff run in 2019. She obviously beat Venus Williams and then beat a couple of players that were like, okay, that seems. I think the more impressive thing about that Gauff run was just the poise and maturity that Gauff had at that age, whereas this one is more like, I think because it's not happening in a major, in a way, it's kind of good for Mirra. So she's not able. They're not really. I don't really see many people drawing those Serena Williams comparisons. Let's say, or projecting massive things for her, so she can go a little bit more under the radar than she would, I guess, in a bigger tournament. So that's kind of good for her, I would say. It was very difficult to avoid those comparisons with Gauff, because I mean, trying to be the next Serena Williams is a really tough billing to live up to at that age, and that's just a lot of pressure.
I agree. And actually, I think Gauff is probably a safer comparison because we still don't know what Gauff will achieve in her career. Whereas immediately going to someone like Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Martina Hingis, people who found success very, very early on in their careers, as was far more common 20, 30 years ago. No, not so much. I think I saw someone in the chat mention Nicole Vidasova as another potential comparison point. Hopefully, Andreeva has a little bit more success. I think the only thing that's going to be more of a problem for Andreeva, like any young player, is how susceptible she is to injury, because we've seen that derail a few people's careers. Remember Anna Konyu bursting onto the scene, doing amazingly well. Amanda Anisimova, less injury, more just a lot of really bad things happening in her life, kind of all coming at once. So I think we're right to hype her up as a very, very talented player. But I'm trying not to make any predictions of how she's going to do. I'm just excited to see her bring this same fearlessness against Sabalenka? Because she probably will.
Yeah, she certainly has. She's certainly actually reminding me of a lot of other youngsters from the Czech Republic, more so like the Fruhvirtova sisters. She also has an older sibling, Erica, I believe, who's like
Yes.
3 years older than her.
They're actually playing in the doubles at the minute. They actually
And
won their doubles match. So they've actually got, I don't know how they're doing at the minute. But when I checked on Saturday or yesterday, they'd actually gotten to the second round of the doubles, and they were playing a very good pairing potentially in the last 16. But that's again good week for Andreeva in both. But yeah, Erica's making her way up the ranking.
interesting you also mentioned the forehand, because I also have some questions about how that shot will hold up on the faster surfaces. So far, the grip doesn't seem as extreme to me. It's kind of somewhere in between, like a normal semi-Western to maybe a bit more Western on Western side. So you wonder how if she'll be able to like create pace with it. Like, will she be rushed? Will she be able to have enough racket head speed? Like when the pressure is kind of on and she's higher up in the rankings and people expect more of her. But for now, I think she can just enjoy this run, and she certainly the Sabalenka will be a very interesting test because all the pressure is on Aryna in that situation. And I actually know that the Andreeva sisters, both of them are actually working with Coco Gauff's old coach.
Oh wow!
The one before Diego Moyano, actually.
Okay, interesting.
I think the last name is Forel.
We know how
the
good a
last
job
name
he
is
did.
Forel. I don't know what the first name is. Yes.
We know how good a job he did getting
Certainly
Goff to
in
the big
the
time really
stages.
early.
Yep, absolutely.
And maybe, fewer obvious weaknesses to work with. Talking about, okay, before we round, I think for me, looking at this section before we move on, I'd say there's two other stories from this section. And they both kind of dovetail together. Let's talk about Aryna Sabalenka. She's had 2 straight sets wins. Neither of them were massively straightforward. Castella had a couple of interesting momentum shifts in that match. Osorio put up a real fight. There were some really good rallies in that one. She's definitely had a tough draw. I don't know if it's I wouldn't say it's because Sabalenka's been off. I think she's just been playing 2 very motivated opponents. But what have your thoughts been on Sabalenka so far?
Yeah, I think she's done well to get herself in good positions. But then she's towards the end of the match, she sort of let her opponents back in a little bit to where they start having a little bit more belief, particularly the Osorio match. She was double break up in that second set, and then things started to get a little bit more complicated for her. Just maybe some of the hitches back, some of the things in the serve, not quite as loose, but I think it's fairly normal. I would say in some of these early rounds, you're still getting used to the conditions. Obviously, she played Castella, who'd already won a match before, and Castella is an opponent who beat her in Miami, so maybe some of that was also playing in her mind. And Osorio is a tricky player with a lot of variety. Did a great job beating Kostyuk the round before, and I imagine she's actually going to enjoy the clay a lot more, Osorio, later on in her career, especially with all her variety and slices and some shots that can be foils for top players. So I think it was a good test for Aryna, and it's going to start getting tougher, I would say, from here on. But she certainly likes these courts. She's well suited to these conditions. In altitude, she's won here before. Played a great match against Ash Barty 2 years ago in the final, and I expect her to go pretty deep this week.
Yeah, so do I. I don't see many people who could stop her, and we'll work through the draw, and that we might spot someone who could be a threat by sort of quarterfinal, semi-final stage. I'm not expecting Andreeva to stop her. That would be amazing. But unlikely, I would say. Although Nico's asking, going back to Andreeva, hypothetically, if Mirra beats Sabs and Iga en route to a Madrid trophy, would that equal eclipse Emma 2021 US Open run? In terms of people you beat, so. No. In terms of people you beat, maybe, but in terms of the scale of the title involved, no.
Yeah. Yes, and having gone through qualies, winning 10 matches in a row like that, the score lines, it's pretty hard to top that off, I would say. But Yeah, because that's kind of one of the more once in a lifetime stories that I've ever seen in any sport. It's like one of the most improbable runs to a title ever.
Which, as a Brit,
But
I
yeah.
enjoyed, and I enjoyed the hype that it generated over here in that. So yeah, I agree. I think nothing's going to quite match that moment. We talked a bit about Osorio. I say she's the other kind of one to watch. I agree with you. I think she's much more of a clay or a slow hard court player. That Kostyuk win was really good. And again, she put up a really decent fight against Sabalenka. So I would say she's kind of the last story from this section, as maybe someone kind of noteworthy, and maybe building a little bit of momentum and confidence coming out of Madrid, even if she's not in the last 16.
Yep.
Cool. All right, let's look at section 7. So this is an interesting one. Let's see, make sure I've got this all in frame. Yep. So couple of interesting stories from here. Not least the exit of 2 top 10 players before the last 16. Kvitova, former champion, not a massive surprise. We know how hot and cold she can be, and Maia had the game to potentially blow her off court if she was off. Garcia losing to Sherif. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I didn't either. Caroline Garcia has looked a little bit stressed to me this year. And when you're stressed, it's hard to play the game that she played last year, where we know how ultra aggressive she is on returns, especially second serve returns, and how much of that aggressive game style that she has coming forward, big serving. Some of that is she's just prone to a bit more ups and downs, I would say, the last few weeks. She's done well. Like, she's gotten to 2 finals. She's done well to sort of be in that top 12 range, I would say, this year, but nothing too crazy for her. And this match kind of reminded me a little bit of the Linette one at the Australian Open, where Garcia had some chances in that first set, didn't quite close it, let Sherif, who's a real fighter, get back into it. And Sherif obviously has some good amount of success on clay. I was surprised that it was here in Madrid, personally. Didn't really have that on my bingo card. I thought Garcia would probably get at least to the 4th round here, but so that one was a little bit surprising. And then Kvitova, obviously coming off the Miami title. I thought, Madrid has obviously been always a great surface for her, and she's won this thing 3 times, and she has a 32-10 record. It's like by far her best Masters event. And perhaps it's just a tough ask because it was a first match in over a month. And Niemeyer's obviously a very quality opponent. So, I knew once she lost that first set, it was going to be tricky for anybody to come back in that situation.
Yeah, Niemeyer's an interesting player to me, actually, because I think she kind of hit the radar by getting to the 4th round of the US Open, getting that set off Iga Swiatek, really frustrating her, and then doing that a little bit again in Australia. She seems to be of that kind of Ostapenko, Samsonova vibe of hit big and go for broke, but makes it work half the time at the minute. Do you see a scenario where she could make it work more often? Get a bit further up?
Probably not. She's more of that kind of game that she has is pretty good to work for about 2 or 3 rounds, I would say. But I struggle to see a world where she puts it consistently, let's say, for like 5 or 6 or 7 matches in a row. Just because it is kind of very hot and cold every day, and there's not a whole lot of margin. She does hit pretty big, but she doesn't have like that safety on both ground strokes, and she kind of has to like redline her tennis a lot of the time. Even against Kvitova, she sort of hit a new level in the second set, but Kvitova really dipped quite a bit. And when she was playing against Mertens, for example, that was a better test for me to gauge. And Mertens was just so solid, so consistent, like forcing Niemeyer to hit several shots and defend. And I don't really think any of those are particularly Niemeyer's strengths. So it's kind of hard. She's a little bit sort of in that, even someone like an Alexandrova or like Jill Teichmann, kind of players where I'm not sure what they're going to produce week to week. Even Samsonova, as great as she is, it's hard to really know what these guys' floors are week to week, I would say.
Yeah.
But she certainly likes the faster courts and faster conditions. So maybe if she's going to have results, it's a lot of the times going to be in those surfaces and courts.
I would agree. Yeah, so maybe watch out for her on the grass. That would be very interesting. I think if she puts it all
Yeah,
together.
quarterfinalists, I think last
Yes,
year. So
quarterfinals at
that's
Wimbledon. I forgot about that. Yeah,
yeah,
in my mind, if she put it all together, she could have been in that semi-final instead of Tatiana Maria,
right.
which would have been I think the Maria Jabeur match was more interesting because of kind of the story and the friendship there. But it would be interesting to see what Niemeyer could have brought into that semi-final. Probably a lot of nerves. Elise Mertens seems to be having a bit of a more consistent year, bit better. Again, looking a bit more solid, kind of back to where we expect her to be, sort of solid top 20, top 30. Has a really good opportunity to get a quarterfinal in Madrid, not knocking Maya Sherif. She could pull something off, but as you said, this doesn't seem to be the kind of clay you would expect her to do well in. Whereas Mertens, I think, has got a bit more history at this tournament. So yeah, she can bank a 1,000 quarterfinal. That would be a nice result for Mertens.
Yeah, definitely. Mertens has definitely shown a bit more consistency, I would say, this year, and she's made quarterfinals and semifinals of big tournaments before, and I seem to remember her having decent results on the clay in the past. And I think this is a good chance for her to play her former doubles partner in the quarterfinals, most likely.
Oh yes, they won a slam title together, didn't they?
Yeah,
Mertens and Sabalenka.
they
Oh, that
I believe they won the U.S. Open in 2019
I thought it was the
together,
Aussie. No, I've got to go with you on that.
and then they also won the Australian. So that
Yeah,
was they've won 2 titles together in doubles. That's pretty cool, actually.
yeah. Sabalenka, doubles champion before winning the singles. Good example there. Yeah, Mertens Sabalenka would be interesting, but I think given how well they know each other and how well Sabalenka's playing right now, Sabalenka would probably have the edge in that clash.
Yeah, and just like Sabalenka won the title a couple of years ago, she also played Mertens in the quarterfinal that year. So this would kind of be a repeat of that if they were to meet.
All right, so let's have a look at this section of the draw. Oh gosh, that's a little bit cut off at the top. I think for me, there's not a massive amount of big stories here. Obviously, good on Aryna Begu for making it this far. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I think obviously she's in the section. This is the section where Ons Jabeur pulled out from. I think probably the most notable win for her was that Muchova match. I thought this was an opportunity, given Muchova's quite comfortable in Madrid, and she got a good showing here last year while she was originally coming back from injury. She might have been the one taking advantage of the situation, but Begu's is an experienced player, so I'm not surprised that she did all right. She did all right here. I think the other things that I kind of spotted here are Ostapenko currently doing what she's doing so far this year, which is starting the tournament absolutely blinder by beating Linda Fravitova, and then having an absolutely appalling performance in the very next match. And I think that's basically been her story of 2023 of blinding start, shocking second match. Because I was not this is not a knock on Samsonova, but I don't see her as a clay court player. And I thought Ostapenko should have had an advantage in that match and clearly did not have. I was marking that down as an interesting one, but clearly had a shocker on that day.
Yeah, very shocking. It was a really disastrous performance, I would say. She wasn't able to find the court at all. And yeah, the other surprise for me in this one was also Kenin. In the first match, I thought that was maybe an opportunity for her to go a bit further. She's been doing well this year in terms of pushing some top players in early rounds. But this was a more surprising scoreline. I thought I didn't actually watch this match, but
Neither did I, to be honest.
yeah, Zinevska's. But yeah, Samsonova and Begu in the 4th round. That should be kind of interesting. And just like you, I expected Mukova to have a good shot in this section. Particularly, but the tricky thing with Mukova is all the start and stops that she's had to do so far in her career, particularly the last 2 years. If you could just get her healthy and staying on tour for a long time, I think certainly has that top 15, top 10 potential.
Yeah, completely agree. I always keep an eye out for Wimbledon. She always does well there. Good to spot Kenin as well. I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's a little bit underperformance considering it looked like Kenin might be getting her mojo back. But hey, maybe you never know with Kenin because, you know, she came into Roland Garros in 2020 with a 6-love loss to Azarenka on clay and still made the finals. So let's see how she does in Rome, what kind of momentum she builds there, what kind of opponent she gets. Because, I mean, I don't really want to comment on Snevska. I don't know her as a player that well. I think if I'm going to make a call on who I think is going to win that one, I think it's pretty tough. The Madrid conditions are pretty favorable to Samsonova. But on the other hand, Begu is the more comfortable clay court player. I might edge towards Begu, given Samsonova may have been let off a little bit easy and maybe a little bit cold. That's just kind of gut instinct, though, in terms of who I think is probably going to be the more likely quarterfinalist.
Yeah, you could certainly be right. I think this is if there's a clay court that Samsonova was going to enjoy, I think it would be this one. Just with the firepower she has and the big serve. Yes, and Stuttgart as well, where last year, of course, she pushed Swiatek to the brink. Probably the toughest match Swiatek played in that 37-match win streak of hers was in that Stuttgart semifinals. So, but certainly these conditions, you know, they also these I must say Madrid also has a little bit of an indoor vibe to it. Whether it's just the acoustics in the stadium or just the covers like in the stands, and sometimes the roof is actually like closed, and there's like, you know, the ceiling is like you can hear like the echoes in the stadium, and it feels very much faster indoor clay with a higher bounce, and sometimes that affects certain players like fast court players tend to do really well here, like the likes of Kvitova, Sabalenka, Samsonova, players like that you would expect, who are not necessarily the most natural movers on clay, and they can sort of treat it almost like a hard court. And I think it bodes well for them. So I'd like to see Samsonova in the quarters, but Begu is very tricky. Like, she's always extremely good defensively, and she gets a lot of balls back in play, and she's makes you always earn every single point. So I think that will be an interesting test.
All right, last section of this half of the draw. I commentated on Gauff versus Badosa, and before the match, I said if Badosa was healthy, she's going to be the favorite against Gauff, because I felt that Badosa was coming in with a little bit more confidence. I didn't feel like this was the kind of event that Gauff would be super comfortable at. Badosa was going to have the crowd support. It just felt like momentum was a little bit behind Badosa. The only question was, might have been she injured against Cocciaretto. There's what reports I was kind of seeing. But once Badosa hit her stride, Gauff went all over the place and really was not effective. And Badosa was just finding ways to disrupt her. Gauff was making a lot of errors on the forehand. I think this is probably, for me, the main story is the Badosa-Gauff clash not being as close as I thought it would be. I think one of our viewers actually predicted a 6-3, 6-4 result and got it half right, because no one predicted the way Gauff kind of fell off in that second set. Although I will say my summary after that match was Badosa was probably making Gauff play like that, and I would kind of call it her victory rather than Gauff's loss. But yeah, what are your thoughts? What were your thoughts after that match?
Yeah, I think you're right, kind of explaining the trajectory of how the match went. I thought in the beginning Gauff was actually hanging in there for the first 3 or 4 games, and you know, even had a breakpoint chance to go up a break in the first set.
She did,
and I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a pretty competitive match, and you know, we're going to see. And I also had Badosa winning it pre-tournament as well. I just felt like the confidence. Badosa has been playing really well all year, but she's just had really tough draws, and I think hasn't played someone like ranked higher than 13, or like hasn't really been able to settle into any of these draws because she had match points against Rybakina, lost to her twice, then lost a really tight one to Sabalenka. So I felt like she was due for a big result like this. And she started out, Gauff started out, I would say pretty well, but then after that, Badosa kind of figured out the strategy, which was hit a lot of balls down the middle, deep, force Gauff into hitting forehands, not even necessarily rushing Gauff's forehand, because Gauff's forehand was just breaking down without even being rushed in this match. And I think that was the frustrating thing if you're a Coco Gauff fan watching this, because it was one thing on a clay court where she can actually like project that side a bit more. We saw her play really well last year when she got to the French Open final, and she was able to hide that weakness a lot better. But at this point, it feels like it's really kind of in her head, and she's not able to swing freely whatsoever on that side or do any kind of consistent, not even keep the ball in play long enough for the opponent to make her feel rushed. So I just felt like this was, Badosa tried to be really nice at the press conference afterwards, but in some ways she didn't really have to do a whole lot to win that second set. I feel like, because her tactics were kind of spot on. Just stay away from the Gauff backhand and make Coco generate all the pace. And pace generation is one of the tricky things with the Gauff forehand, with that really big take back, and of course her footwork is a little bit lagging as she's running to that wing, so she can't really accelerate as well, and the grip is extreme too. But it's tough. I think it's a tough watch for Gauff right now, particularly the last two tournaments, I would say.
I have a couple of points actually I wanted to ask you about. I mean, actually, no, I'll not ask, but sort of, I kind of maybe for you to want to respond on this less of a question, but something that I thought, I agree with you that, yeah, Gauff didn't need to rush the forehand. I felt like she was trying to hit more forehands and kind of move Badosa around with the forehand and use it a lot more. And I was thinking, surely if the backhand is your strength, she had time to run around and hit backhands if she wanted. And I didn't understand why she wasn't doing that more. You obviously probably have a much better tennis tactician mindset than I do. You can probably have some insight into why maybe she didn't try that. And then the other thing I just wanted to throw at you is actually we had a bit of a chat on the channel with one of our regulars, Ghost of Gerolatis, or Ghosty, as we refer to him. And he is of the view that he thinks that Gauff's insistence on playing doubles is actually hurting her development, which seems to be a very contrary view to maybe some others I've seen. And I wanted to kind of ask your view on that, because it's not an idea I've kind of considered.
Yeah, I haven't considered that, because she got to number one last year in doubles. Her net play did improve quite a bit. And I think she has, obviously good chemistry with Pegula. And I think it, especially if there's 2 weeks master events, it can actually be a great way for her to continue to develop her game and get some more, because if you lose early now in these tournaments, there's a lot of time like before the next one, with these being 12 days. And so sometimes players just need like more reps. And I think playing doubles is probably going to be a good thing. It's pretty good that she managed to be like top 5 in both singles and doubles at one point last year. In terms of the using the forehand a lot more and not running around it, I think she also is she's a bit stubborn in that area. Like she likes to, at some points last year, I actually liked sometimes what she was doing on the forehand, which she was actually slicing a lot more on the forehand, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but she was finding other ways to like win points, either by like hitting it really deep and loopy and then coming forward and hitting a good volley off of it, or she was mixing in a forehand slice there and then like trying to force like her opponent to move in, and then maybe she can defend with the backhand. Like she was just trying to get more backhands and just using the forehand as a changeup. And I think maybe she should go back to that, because in this match she was kind of trying to go play from the baseline with her forehand against Badosa, and Badosa hits the ball so heavy off of both wings that I just felt like it was sitting up nice and heavy for Badosa. And then all of a sudden, when she wanted, she was in control, because Badosa, one thing I love about her game is she doesn't miss a whole lot. Like it's pretty high margin, so she can hit, pretty solid forehands and backhands without missing a ton and with pretty good depth. And I think that depth was actually bothering Coco a lot more than even just the sheer power that Badosa was bringing, because power to power, especially on the backhand, I feel like Gauff can actually match a lot of these top players. But
and we could see that like their backhand rallies were actually pretty strong when it did get backhand to backhand, which actually wasn't that often. But with Badosa, I think I completely agree. Provided she's not rushed, and when she gets rushed, things get interesting from her perspective. Just one more point on here that John's asking. Can we say that neither Badosa or Gauff have won a slam in the next 5 years? So that would be 2028. Gauff would be 24. Badosa would be nearly 30, like 29. I could definitely see that with Badosa. I think there's some limitations there, or at least her best chance would be at Roland Garros if Iga had a bad year. Gauff, I think, has a lot more. I still think that age means she's got a lot more growth potential, and we shouldn't be kind of definitively saying she's not going to win a slam in the next 5 years. Also, but like 5 years time, that's what we might have been saying about Aryna Sabalenka 5 years ago, and she finally won one this year at age 24. So I'm not keen on writing Gauff off yet in the next sort of 5 years. That'd be my answer to it. What would you say, Vansh?
Yeah, I think Gauff is going to have a lot more bites at the apple, as you say, because she's got so many more slams left to play, and potentially if she does make the changes we all want on her forehand, which is for her to just take some more time off maybe and just fix some of those technical issues, then I could see it happening for her, particularly at Roland Garros, where, let's say Iga loses early, or, the draw opens up like it kind of did last year for her in a good way to get to the final. And, maybe she can give herself a chance. Badosa is, it's strange. Like last year, she got to number 2 in the world, and she had such a good rise in 2021. And she won Sydney and everything was kind of going well, but then some injury question marks and also like her mental health sometimes kind of got in the way of her competing as hard as she would have liked on a regular basis. So it feels largely mental for me with Badosa in a lot of these situations, and she's kind of talked about that as well. Like she really felt the pressure last year. Entire Netflix episode on her performance at Madrid, basically, because he's 5 or 10 minutes, he lives 5 or 10 minutes away from this tournament, and she takes it extremely seriously, like bigger than any major event. And I could see why, because that's, it's her home event and she grew up here. She has all these memories. She wants to win it for the crowd. But in terms of winning a slam, like she seems to do well in Australia as well and at Roland Garros in the past. So I could see it happening at some point for her, but I just don't know, with Iga being so strong and like these she can certainly hang with a lot of these top players, but now the question is like, is she going to get her ranking back up to the top 5 or top 10 and kind of give herself more chances? Or is she going to sort of be still searching and looking for that big win? Like if she does really well this week, that'll go a long ways in her getting back to where we all think she deserves to be, which is certainly in the top 15, top 10. And then there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, she definitely deserves to be top 10, top 15. Last word on Gauff, I agree. She's going to have more bites to the apple. And I think she's got more apples to pick from. I think she's going to be a contender at Wimbledon. I know that her game limitations maybe shouldn't suit grass, but yet she's never got... She's got to at least the 3rd round in all 3 times she's played. She got to the 4th round on debut. Lost to some very, very good players. I think that maybe she's a comfortable natural surfaces player, maybe because of her movement. So I think she's got a chance at Wimbledon, and I could also see a scenario where the crowd carries her to a US Open title at some point. So
she certainly has like that X factor in terms of like star power, I would say, Coco.
Yes.
And she has sort of everything else except for the forehand right now in terms of her game. I would say the second serve is sometimes she has a bit of some technical issues with it, but I think that's improved compared to a couple of years ago, and it's more the forehand.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, like a lot of players, you could say the second serve could be better. But yeah, I think at the minute, after watching that Badosa match, the forehand definitely was lacking something. But you'd have to ask her about it. I mean, look, we can kind of keep on going. Look at the forehand. Look at the forehand. Look at the forehand. None of us are her coach.
And she's going to get a new coach soon because Yeah, she split with Maia now. So
well, Renee Stubbs said she was available last week, so maybe it'll be her. We're going to stay in this section because I think there's a couple of other stories that are worth touching on. Talk about Gauff and Badosa for the last 10 minutes or so, but I do want to talk about Rebecca Masarova and Maria Sakkari. Masarova, I thought, had a really impressive run. If you look at her draw, Christina Buxer is climbing her way up the rankings, has had some unexpectedly good results given her game, which seems a little underpowered, but works really well on clay. And then Masarova beating her in a good fight, then beating Vekic, which was a good win given how strong Vekic is coming on at the minute. But then running into Sakkari and getting that first set. And I think that Sakkari match for the Greek, that's kind of her turning around a match that typically in the past we would have expected to lose at a certain point, kind of going down, being a bit down, and kind of fighting her way back into it, but losing to an underranked player. She could have easily just crumbled like she has in the past. So I think that's a very interesting win for Maria Sakkari. What are your thoughts on those two stories?
Yeah, it's cool that we have a Sakkari Badosa clash, kind of
Yes.
rematch of Indian Wells, I want to say, last year in the semis.
Yes,
So
that was a good one. I remember that.
Yes, so if that's anything to go by, this should be a really good match and pretty competitive. Yeah, Sakkari has made a bit of a habit of winning some matches from a set down, I would say, this year. Particularly if you look at her Indian Wells run, almost every single match she was coming back from a set down, like a set and a breakdown against Rogers. I think a set and a breakdown against Kalinina, and I think after that she played Pliskova. She beat her. It was she was down a break in the third, and then Kvitova as well. I remember Kvitova totally. It seemed like Kvitova was going to make the semis for the first time in Indian Wells, and Sakkari was down 4-6, 1-3, 15-40, in danger of just being breadsticked in that second set, and then she's just found a way to sort of turn it around, and she plays really well. I think when the back is against the wall, it's when she has to close these big matches that I feel like the pressure sometimes gets to her, and maybe that mental block of having been in so many semis and finals weighs on her. But I like these conditions for her. I actually quite like it because I think she's pretty strong and athletic, and she uses her forehand well in when the ball is bouncing pretty high, like shoulder height. I feel like she can take the ball early on the rise and maybe do some damage, and it's at least fairly consistent what she's going to do. And sometimes it's a bit too predictable against the very best players. So maybe Badosa will have a good read on that. But this should be a pretty interesting match, and it could go either way, I think, actually.
Yeah, I can't call it. I'm super excited about it. I'm gonna have to look up what time it is tomorrow. I'm hoping I can catch it. But that would be I probably, if it's a Spanish play, it's probably going to go late, but we'll see. But I agree. I think it's going to be a good match. There's going to be some cracking rallies between the two. I can't call it. I think whoever wins it is going to be the favorite against either Samsonova or Begu in the quarterfinals, which would be very interesting if they're playing Sabalenka in the semifinals for that one.
Pre-tournament I had Badosa and Sabalenka meeting in the semi, so I'm just gonna stick by that just because I don't like to go against my pre-tournament picks.
Neither do I. I think either Badosa or Sakkari against Sabalenka would be interesting. I think the more interesting the two might be Badosa, just to see what she could do a bit more. Maybe the Spanish crowd will carry her a bit. I don't know, but then maybe the pressure will get to her. I think Sabalenka might have a little bit more over both of them, but it depends on how comfortable she is. But yeah, and that's going to be a good one. Yeah, I'm excited. So let's move on to the next section. So we're down to the top part of the draw. So those of you who've been commenting, asking opinions about Iga, don't worry, we will get there. but sorry, just need to tweak this. There we go. Right. Let's see what I've got showing on the screen. Just need to scroll across. We've got some long names on this one. So I'd say from the kind of the stories that I'm picking up here, I think kind of in terms of like news stories, I think it was nice to see Pavlyuchenkova doing well, beating Jimenez Katsenseva. That was I marked that down as a potentially interesting match. Ended up being really close, 9-7 in the deciding tie break, and then losing to Kasatkina. But yeah, I think it's the first time in a while Pavlyuchenkova has played, and it was kind of good to see her back, kind of producing some really good tennis.
Yeah, she's still fairly young as well, so I think she certainly has, as she was telling John in one of the Talking Tennis interviews, that she certainly has no plans of retiring or stopping, and so that's good because I think she still has quite a bit of good tennis left in her, and it wasn't too long ago that she was in the French Open final, so nice to see her back and healthy.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other 2 points. I think we're going to keep going with Russian players here because they're the ones I think are standing out to me. Potapova losing to her, kind of having a couple of really good close matches with Christian, and then just narrowly losing to Kudermetova. Again, Potapova showing herself to be kind of competing well at the minute, producing some really strong results. Kasatkina finally going deep in a tournament bigger than a 500. I didn't have a lot of faith in her to do that, but she's now in the fourth round. She's playing Kudermetova, which I think could be a very interesting clash.
Yeah, it could be. That's a rematch of the last year's Roland Garros quarterfinal. Kasatkina is a very fascinating player for me because she has a lot of variety in how she plays. Very, very fun to watch. Pretty interesting personality as well. But it's amazing because she has one of the worst second serves in the top 50, and yet she's somehow still like managed to be 8th in the world, which is pretty impressive. Because that means she's so good at almost everything else, and stylistically wise, it's a great contrast every time she plays like a big hitter. Or particularly, I was watching her match against Jabeur in Charleston. That was a really fun watch. It was basically Flair against Flair, and it was a pretty tight 2-set match, and so that gave me kind of some hope that I think on the clay, Kasatkina definitely comes into the picture a lot more, and I could see her like playing closer to the level that she was at last year. So that's good to see, and should be a fun match against Kudermetova. She beat she picked up 2 nice wins, fairly straightforward for the most part. Pavlyuchenkova was a little bit trickier just because they're both friends, and some of the points were a bit tough physically for Kasatkina, but she ended up getting it done, and then more straightforward against Serenko. But this match would be interesting because I might favor Kudermetova a little bit more in these conditions, but it's a tricky one to call, just because like Kudermetova might get more help out of her serve, and Kasatkina might have to work way too hard to hold. But I could see that being fairly close.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. I think they're both, I agree, they're both kind of disruptors on the tour. They're both kind of they're pretty sort of, when they're on, they're kind of consistent matches for the top players and can get a good win over them. I really enjoy watching Kasatkina.
They both do really well at the 500 level. Like they both go pretty consistently deep. So
yes. So it's going to be that's going to be an intriguing battle. I love watching Kasatkina. I love the flair that she brings. I like when she decides to fight, how scrappy it gets. I definitely think that one's worth keeping an eye out for. All right. Let's go up a section 2. Section
one more point
3.
on Kudermetova. I really like her service motion. It's very fluid, and she's able to get quite a lot of pop and power for someone her size.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I forget. Like, often when I watch her, I go, "Oh yeah, she doesn't have a lot of height on her."
Yeah, but the serve is pretty good. I'd say she's she gets some good +1s, and she's able to get more out of that shot than you would think. So that certainly bodes well on courts like these.
All right. Here we're into an interesting section of the draw, because I think sort of this quarter of the draw I kind of saw as wide open, with Pegula being the marginal favourite to kind of get through. Well, maybe the significant favourite, because you have to have playing a very good day to beat Jessica Pegula a lot of the time. And so far, her journey through the draw has kind of shown that. Freck and Bushkova, close sets, but Pegula kind of still coming through as you would expect. I would say. I think the three kind of names more slightly below that kind of standing out to me is, those were interesting stories. Martina Trevisan, Alicia Parks, and Eugenie Bouchard.
Yeah.
For various different reasons. We won't talk about the off-court stuff or the tweet. I don't necessarily think that's relevant, but Bouchard seems to enjoy playing in Madrid. And I think even though a lot of people don't like her for stuff like the tweet, I would say that I think it's better to have her playing well in tennis, if anything, just to give us an interesting story, especially given kind of the success she had about 9 years ago. So I was happy to see her get that result.
Yeah, same. She played really well in the qualifying, and then like won this match against Yastremska. Was pretty pumped, and of course we know about the tweet, but of course we know also 5 years ago she ended up playing really well against Sharapova, and then made it all the way to the quarters, and then eventually ran out to a better player. But it's good, because at least it shows that Bouchard is capable of top 75, top 50 level tennis in the future, and maybe if she can stay fit, she can certainly get there. Because we saw in 2014 she was able to perform on all surfaces. Obviously the Wimbledon final, but also a French Open semifinal, Australian Open semifinal, finished top 5. So certainly proved it for the whole season, not just one tournament. So I think she has that level in her, and so that's a good story. And then Parks was a good story as well, because she's really struggled since winning in Lyon, and she's particularly struggled outdoors with her technique and how she hits the ball, and the higher bounce doesn't always tend to do her favors. But in these conditions with the big serve, which she has one of the best serves in the game, both in terms of like consistent miles per hour and aces, and she was able to get a lot of free points. Like played pretty well against Azarenka. Azarenka hasn't really played it that well since the Australian Open semis, but it was still a pretty good win. And Azarenka it seemed like Azarenka might get her teeth into this match, and we might be headed for a deciding set, but Parks did well to fend her off. And then today she just lost to, I think, a more experienced clay court player in Trevisan, who's obviously has a lot of pedigree on the surface. So I wouldn't say that's a bad result.
No, I don't think so either. It kind of goes back to what you were saying, because like everyone's kind of painting Alicia Parks as an indoor specialist. Probably not wrong, but kind of goes back to what you were saying about Madrid feeling like an indoor tournament, and these kind of conditions kind of playing into Parks' strengths. So I think I agree. Sort of what she can produce and what she has produced is a good sign for her at this tournament. Trevisan, I think, is a player a lot of people have written off in the past. Maybe seeing that quarterfinal in 2020 as a fluke, or even the semi-final last year as a fluke. But she's backing things up with like that United Cup performance that she put in. She's getting some good clay court results. Last 16 at Madrid is a very, very good result, and maybe about what you would expect for someone of her kind of clay court caliber. So I'm really pleased to see her kind of backing up that potential that she's displayed in flashes over the last couple of years.
Yeah, she's certainly a very smart player as well. She knows she's doesn't have the biggest firepower, but she moves the ball around the court very well, and she's tricky because lefty. She can hit a lot of good angles. She can wrong foot her opponents, and I mean, she competes really, really hard. Pegula said afterwards today that she's really loud and very feisty. So now they'll play each other in the 4th round. certainly
Pegula
expect Pegula to get through that though, just with
Yeah.
her experience and how consistent she's been. She hasn't played her very best tennis yet, but so far she hasn't needed to, and she stepped up when she needed to in both tie breaks. Particularly against Buskova, she played a very good second set tie break. I watched some of that, and she loves these conditions. Like, she was a set away from winning this thing last year, so I expect her to go pretty deep as well.
Yeah, before getting probably to be a little too tight against Jabeur. Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things we underrate about Pegula is the fact that most of the time she actually does win without having to produce her best tennis. And I think because we don't see the top level results when she is having to play her best against the best, it doesn't always work. But I think the fact that she doesn't need to against the rest of the field is a massive compliment to her. And something that she should be proud of with that level. There's a reason why she's world number 3. And I would agree with your assessment that she's probably making it through that match with Trevisan. The court conditions will probably favor her slightly more. I think the Italian probably prefers the slower stuff.
Yeah. Also good to see Svitolina back.
Yes.
And playing well. She's actually playing pretty well for someone who's been off for over a year and just had a kid, and she's certainly, like, she's not winning these matches yet, but seems to be pretty close to winning 1 or 2 in a tournament and getting back to where she was at before.
And let's face it, tennis is better off with Svitolina, former top 10 WTA finals champion, multiple 1000 winner. Yeah, I would be up for seeing Svitolina coming back, and I like you, I'm very impressed with the results that she's achieved straight back after hitting the court. So, I mean, she's come close to some wins that in the matches that she's lost. So, yeah, good spot for that story there, Vansh. I wasn't sure whether to talk about that, but you absolutely right to pick up on that. So obviously, Pegula is probably going to be we're saying that the favorite to beat Trevisan, and then she played with the winner of the Russian clash of Kudermetova and Kasatkina. I'd make Pegula the favorite in that one again. Again, very similar sort of players who kind of get through the rest of the competition and then maybe hit a ceiling. I think Pegula's seeing is slightly higher than Kudermetova or Kasatkina, and I expect her to make the semis.
Yes, I had her in the semis pre-tournament as well, and I definitely think
this draw's falling well for you, Vansh, isn't it?
Yes, although we'll get to a more interesting section later, and we might have some disagreements there.
Right. Okay. That could be. I don't know, actually. I don't know. I think you're making some assumptions based on my preferences for players, but we'll see. Right. Few stories from this section, I think. I think this bit, we're cutting near to the top of the draw now. Hopefully people don't mind us chatting a little bit longer. I certainly don't.
Yeah.
So I think there's a number of stories here, not necessarily ones we need to touch on in great detail. I'll summarize what I think, and you can pick up on the ones that you find the most interesting. So for me, spot is Brenda Kvitova, the other teenager. Got a set against Kalinskaya. She got a set against Kalinskaya. I thought she might get that one, didn't quite pull it off, but still a very impressive result for sort of the whatever you call it, counterpart, peer of Andreeva in the other half of the draw. Kalinskaya actually having a very good tournament because she beat Elena Rybakina and was almost a set away from a 4th round appearance. So that's one to note. Rybakina's loss caught me out a little bit. I mean, I know that she's coming off a little bit of an injury from Stuttgart, but I thought these conditions would suit her. So I'm a little bit surprised that she's not playing Krejčíková in the last 16. Laura Siegemund got a nice boost from the talking tennis attention to get through Podoroska and then put up a decent fight against Petra Martic. And then just to round off on other stuff to spot that I've spotted, Bianca Andreescu, I wasn't expecting her back so soon. Good on her for coming back and giving us another great battle as she always does against Zhu Wang or Wang Zhu. But of course, the big name in this section was Barbora Krejčíková. so far solidifying potentially both our opinions that she's the favorite to get through this section, regardless of how Rybakina did. And she's certainly making the most of an easier draw than she's had in recent times. So yeah, pick up on any of those stories that might interest you.
Yeah, certainly Rybakina and Kalinskaya is going to be an interesting rivalry to watch for the next however many years they play, because they're pretty similar in ages, and they had a very good match in Miami actually in the first round, and that one went Rybakina's way. Obviously, the confidence from winning Indian Wells, and maybe this one just went the other direction because, like you said, she was coming back from, adjusting from Stuttgart, and then the back injury potentially still bothering her, ran out of gas a little bit in that third set. But yeah, a little bit surprising that she wasn't able to come through, I would say. I certainly had her coming in the fourth round and playing Krejčíková.
Same.
Before I saw this, but Kalinskaya is certainly a player to watch out for, and I think the peak level for her is pretty high. But it's just a matter of can she do it? Can she do it consistently? And tricky match against Martic, who's very difficult on clay because she has such a good backhand slice. She moves the ball around really well. She's quite clever, likes to come forward, like pretty experienced, like been to second week of Roland Garros before. So I would say this section it's not too surprising that she was able to sort of take advantage of Kalinskaya like being unable to back up the win. But the other story was Andreescu for me as well, because that seemed like a very serious injury in Miami when she fell, and that was really sad to watch. But seems like she can actually get back to form much sooner. I'm not expecting too much from Andreescu, particularly on clay and maybe even for the grass, just because her best results have seemed to come on the hard courts, and she might need a little bit of time to just come back and get to that really good level that she was at in Miami, where she took out Raducanu and was like really making her way into the draw, and potentially could have had a really deep run in Miami the way she was playing. Even though she lost that first set against Alexandrova, but in this match she just couldn't quite close it out. Like she was up 6-3, 3-0, and before Wang like came back and then played a little bit too good in the third set. But Krejčíková I think is the favorite to get out of the section. She's looked pretty good so far. Dropped that one set against Kovanic, but then the last three sets have been fairly comprehensive. So I expect her to get to the quarters.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And like, nice side against Martic. She's a very, very good player, but I think Krejčíková is currently in the kind of the better form right now. But yeah, lots of interesting stuff going on there. All right, final section of the draw, and we're back to the top of the list. And a few kind of not necessarily many stories from this section. I was surprised Bernarda Pera maybe got as far as she did. I didn't have her down as a clay quarter, but again, Madrid's a little bit different, will suit the bigger hitters a bit more. I think Iga Swiatek getting to where she is, no surprise. She seemed to be fairly comfortable against Grabher and Pera. I think for me, the interesting thing is the defending semi-finalist, or at least, I don't know, maybe that was 2021. She got to the semi-finals.
No, you're right. She made the semis last year.
Okay. Yeah. Got right. Yeah. Alexandrova, getting there. I thought it'd be Zhang Qinwen. I thought we'd have a Swiatek Zhang Qinwen last 16, which I was kind of a little bit interested to see how that would go. But Alexandrova, again, showing that she's got a little bit more to her game and is producing some really, really strong results. So good on her for backing up a good chunk of the points she's trying to defend. I'd say that's probably the name I'm seeing here that's interesting me the most.
Yeah, Alexandrova is interesting. I thought Zhang would win as well, and I thought that before last year as well. Like when it was Zhang and Niemeyer in the third round, I thought, oh yeah, we're gonna have Zhang against Swiatek in the fourth round, but then Niemeyer took her out, and kind of same thing here. Didn't get a chance to watch the Zhang Alexandrova match, but I know that Alexandrova is really tough to beat in these conditions because she's a really big server. She hits her spots really well, and when she's feeling it, she hits really flat, particularly off her forehand, and she plays really good like first strike tennis, and lots of power. Like Made the quarterfinals of Miami as well. Likes the faster conditions, I would say. So this isn't too surprising considering last year she was in the semis. She seems to be a more streaky player, but when she's on those weeks, she tends to go pretty deep. So I think that's good because Cornet is also not easy, pretty crafty player. So she's gotten through these two matches, and I'll be very interested in the match against Swiatek because that could potentially get tricky. I remember they played each other in Ostrava, I want to say in October, and that was a 3-setter, and that was indoors on hard court. I certainly still expect Swiatek to come through it, but maybe tested a little bit more than she's been in the first 2 rounds. Fakia is asking, is Alexandrova a difficult opponent for Iga? Certainly difficult than her last 2 opponents were, I would say. Swiatek is probably going to have to be on it right from ball 1.
Yeah, Fakia asked that about an hour ago when we were going through the other half of the draw. So hopefully, if you're still watching, Fakia, we finally got to your question. A few people asking about Swiatek and how that's going to go. I agree. I think it could be interesting. I know that they have a bit of a scrap. I think with the level Swiatek brings, I think it takes a certain type of caliber of player to bring her down based on sort of previous achievements. And I don't think Alexandrova fits into that. Could see her taking a step, but I don't see her winning that match. So
I'm in agreement as well. I think Iga is still a total step above on clay. And I don't really see her losing, but I could see it being tight. Maybe one tight set. Maybe Alexandrova sneaks a set. I think these conditions, just like I think people have been comparing it to like Rafa in Madrid, comparing it to Iga because Rafa's only won this thing 4 times on clay, compared to like the 12 in Barcelona and like the 10, 11 in Monte Carlo and 10 in Rome and 14 in RG, just because of the altitude and like it's easier to maybe rush the forehand a little bit more, and you can see like she hasn't played this event a whole lot. I think she's only played this once, right, Swiatek? And that was in 2021.
Maybe twice. I don't know whether she played it in 2019.
Yeah, I think so. This is just her second appearance.
Okay, so, which might be a bonus for her because I think when the one time she did play, she lost to Ash Barty, who was in really good form.
Right, and Iga is not the Iga that we know now. So I think there's very little data for Iga still in Madrid at this point. But so I would certainly expect her to win Madrid at some point in her career, But maybe this will end up being like it was for Nadal, where she's going to have a lot more success in Rome and Roland Garros. And this could potentially be the one where her rivals are closer.
I would agree. I think, like you're saying, with the rushing the forehand, conditions enable that a lot more compared to other clay courts. Having said that, you could say the same about Stuttgart, maybe. I mean, on paper, would Iga maybe struggle there more than Madrid?
Potentially, maybe with the altitude, it's like a little harder to control the ball. Whereas indoors, it's at least like there's no outside conditions or factors. So maybe that plays a role. I also thought Iga was serving pretty well in Stuttgart. Maybe those conditions actually helped her serve, because especially on clay, particularly in the final against Sabalenka, I think she only faced 1 break point. That was the most impressive match for me that Iga's played all year in a really big spot. So after that, I'm like, I can't really bet against Iga because, if she's playing this well in Stuttgart on clay, then that's quite scary for the rest of the field, for particularly Rome and Roland Garros.
Well, look, this if we have a Swiatek going through, potentially sets up a very juicy quarterfinal clash with Barbora Krejčíková.
Yeah,
and I'm finding that one very hard to call.
Same,
but the reasons that we've kind of outlined. I've done the pessimistic fan thing and gone with I don't want to jinx my player,
right?
And I've gone with Krejčíková to win it. And I think, if you're given Krejčíková has clearly the tools to trouble Iga, and she's in a place where it is easier to trouble her on clay, and Krejčíková is very comfortable on clay. This is a scenario where she could win that match, but I could also equally see an opportunity of Iga going, nope, you are not winning 3 matches against me in a row. This is this is clay. I beat you on clay.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a hard one to call. But that's another one that's going to happen on Tuesday, which is annoying. No, I might be able to catch it. Depends on what time I get back from work. But I'm looking forward to seeing how that one plays out.
Yeah, that's the quarterfinal I had in my pre-tournament as well, and I also went with Krejčíková just because of for the reasons I was like, okay, because it's Madrid, because Krejčíková has won 2 finals against Iga, because maybe she's, the difficult matchup being like just how good Krejčíková is able to return, like she was in Dubai, faster courts there. Similar, she'll get more help on her serve. Like I started to think like about the X's and O's, and I went with Krejčíková, but I would be completely unsurprised if Swiatek just comes out and wins against her 3-2 and sort of has revenge, a bit like how Sabalenka's been doing to Krejčíková the last few tournaments, because they seem to meet almost every single week now. It just seems to be a thing.
which maybe they're destined to play each other in the final. In Madrid.
That's the final that I had.
Me too.
As well. So.
And I actually went back and forth on who I thought would win that final. Actually,
I ended up going with Sabalenka just because of the last 2.
But I did think, looking back on that Dubai performance from Krejčíková, yeah, she was aided a little bit, maybe by Swiatek being sick, but I don't think it made a difference to how Krejčíková herself was playing and playing very, very well. And I think that Dubai title was Krejčíková having an incredible week and showing what level she can produce, which is very, very impressive.
Yeah, certainly. And that goes down as maybe one of the best runs I've ever seen, just because she beat 4 top 15 players and she beat world number 1, 2, and 3 in the same week, which is like, that's like her announcing herself again. And we know she hasn't really liked the idea of there being a new big 3 on the WTA, and she sort of felt like she's not quite gotten the respect that she deserves. And so maybe winning a title like this or getting to another final or beating one of the top players again would get her, because I also think she's extremely underranked at 12 or 13. Like,
yes. For sure. She
just like Rybakina at 7 feels very low. Just like it's the same for Krejčíková.
Krejčíková needs to be top 10.
Yeah, they're both sort of top 5 players in my book.
Yeah, agreed. There is a clear right now in terms of sort of results in the early part of 2023, a top 5 if you want to include Pegula.
Yeah, I think I would include Pegula as well, just because consistently getting to semis.
Which I expected to do again. I would expect whoever Pegula played in that semi, be it Krejčíková or Swiatek, that player is going to have the advantage in that semi. And then, whether it's Iga or Krejčíková against Sabalenka in the final, that's going to be absolutely fascinating. Or it could be Badosa and Sakkari in that final.
Yeah.
But we've got 5 players, I'd say, that are there you go. You've got your 5 players who you could see as potential finalists. I mean, less kind of close on the Sabalenka versus either Badosa or Sakkari thing, but could see it happening. But yeah, there's probably your 5 players if you're want a tournament or big picture, wanting to know who's going to win the tournament. Swiatek, Krejčíková, Sabalenka, Badosa, Sakkari are your names to watch.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, we've been going for about an hour and a quarter. Just wanted to, before signing off, I think I saw some chatter about the WTA Power Rankings video that I released, or we released last week, where I went through, based on the data from Charleston, Stuttgart, and last year's Roland Garros, who was kind of in my top 10 kind of power ranking that in form ahead of the French Open. I'm not going to be looking at it again until and adjusting it until we know who our quarter finalists are. I will definitely be releasing an update after Madrid. But sort of, I think most of those players who are in there haven't necessarily had a bad tournament so far. I don't know if did you catch it? If not, I can recap it.
I don't exactly remember the order, but I remember looking at it.
On it.
It seemed pretty more or less the list I would have come up with as well. So
yeah. I think the feedback I've been seeing is maybe Jabeur was overranked, but I kind of justify it as if you look at purely on form and results, she has had better results on clay so far than Barbora Krejčíková.
yeah, definitely.
But that's literally it.
Yeah, because Madrid and Rome last year were pretty major, I would say. Like I certainly, after she won Madrid, I didn't expect her to go that deep in Rome, and she could have easily lost any number of those matches, even the Kasakina match in the semis and some scares before. So it was good to see her like back that up, and I hope she's like healthy again, because it would be a shame if she was not able to play Roland Garros or Rome, and because that injury did seem quite worrying.
Yeah, she said it was a tear, wasn't it?
Yeah. So those take like some weeks to heal, and so she might be in doubt for Rome, and then hopefully
definitely in doubt for Rome.
Hopefully we'll see her at the French, because she's got like, she lost last year in the first round to Linette, but certainly I think if she'd gone through that, and I remember her draw last year at Roland Garros, she could have gone really deep and with a chance to
could have been in the final.
Could have been in the final against Iga. So it's a bit of a shame, but I think I certainly have her as one of the best clay court players, just because she's performed at every single place except for Roland Garros. I don't believe she's been past the fourth round yet.
No,
but I would expect that to change.
Yeah, I would too. So I agree with you. And also, let's face it, the world's a better place when Ons Jabeur is fit, healthy, and happy.
If Ostapenko is giving her a hug at the net, that should tell you something. That should tell you how liked Jabeur is.
And we need lots of positive influences in tennis, as many as we can possibly get. All right. Thank you, Vansh, for coming on and kind of running through the big stories of the tournament so far. I appreciate it's probably gone a little bit longer than maybe we both expected. But there have been a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. I will say, in terms of, which of the, I think I know what the answer is going to be. But which of the fourth round matches that was going to happen over the next couple of days are you most excited for?
I'm excited for Badosa and Sakari, just because I was there live for the Indian Wells semifinal, and it was a good quality match. And I think that has the potential of being an exciting three-setter that could have, like, the winner of that could go into the semis and potentially like have a say at the end of the tournament. And I think the crowd will be all in on Badosa as a story. Particularly after last year, because last year was heartbreaking for her. That match against Halep, she wasn't really able to perform anywhere near her capabilities. So I think it'll be a good opportunity for her to rectify that a little bit this time around. And then I'm also excited for Andreeva and Sabalenka.
Yes.
So those are the two that I'm most excited about.
Yeah, and they're both happening tomorrow, which is going to be wonderful. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to quickly get the schedule up while we're talking. But yeah, completely agree.
And I'd also throw in Swiatek as well, Alexandrova for me.
Okay, I would throw in Kudermetova and Kasatkina, just for that maybe slightly more the kind of variety we're going to get with that match. I'd say that was my second choice. And then, but definitely Andreeva, Sabalenka, is hard to pin down, because I want to see Andreeva play well, but I'm also I'm expecting Sabalenka to kind of walk over her a little bit. I'm trying not to get my hopes up for that being a great match, but it's an intriguing one for those of us who want to get a glimpse of Andreeva kind of starting out.
Maybe it has a little bit of the Halep and Gauff vibes from 2019 in the fourth round
at Wimbledon, which would Sabalenka would probably take, because that means that she's going to win the title off the back of that. Okay, so in terms of the WTA schedule, the times on here are in GMT, which means I've got to mentally work out what time they all are across the board. The matches the WTA matches to start with Samsonova and Begu and Sherif and Mertens. That's 10 a.m. UK time, 11 a.m. no, it would be 9 a.m. Madrid time, 2 a.m. your time, Vansh, sadly. And Andreeva Sabalenka is actually at midday UK time. So that's 4 a.m. your time.
I'll be waking up to that one, it seems like.
Okay. Kudermetova and Kasatkina is pretty much straight after at 12:35. So those two are probably going to be on at the same time. Intriguing, actually. They're actually all of the last 16 is happening tomorrow, which I didn't realize. Krejčíková Martic is happening we're expected to happen start around 2 p.m. UK time, which would be again sort of 6 a.m. your time. Badosa Sakkari gets underway 3 p.m. UK time, kind of 2 p.m. European time if you're on that, and again that would be a fairly early-ish start for you, Vanch, probably like 7 a.m.
I'll get up for that one.
You get up for that one, but also yes. You might be a bit tired for the rest. I think those of you on the East Coast, that's going to be an 11 a.m. start for you. I'm hoping I'm getting the maths right here. 11 or 12. No, it's 11 a.m. Hang on. No, it'd be 10 a.m. I don't know anymore. I've lost track.
Which one? Which one?
East Coast, Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, for which match?
Badosa Sakkari.
Oh, yeah. That would be 10.
10 a.m. Then Pegula against Trevisan a couple of hours later. So 12 midday Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. European time, Central European time. And then the finale starting at around 20 past 8, or at least sort of probably after the Bayer Tsitsipas match, is Swiatek versus Alexandrova. That's going to be kind of the finale. They're putting Iga on at night a lot, which I'm not going to complain about. So I'm excited. Okay, we've got some good WTA matches, and I'm going to say this again. I actually am way more interested in the WTA matches that are happening tomorrow ahead of any of the ATP matches that are happening tomorrow. On the whole, there's a couple of intriguing clashes in the ATP side, but for me, WTA is going to be where it's at for last 16 day tomorrow.
Yeah, ATP is still finishing up their third round. They're in the bottom half of the third round, and I think most of the intrigue for me anyway on the ATP has been the top half, more so than the bottom. Obviously, the exception being the Team Tsitsipas match yesterday. That was pretty intriguing, but after that, I would say I agree with you. It's the WTA tomorrow that takes the show.
Yeah. So in terms of if I'm gonna like say binge watch tennis tomorrow, I'm probably going to start the day with Samsonova against Begu, maybe, or Sherif Mertens. Like they start at the same time, could go interesting. But I think day really kicks off with Andreeva and Sabalenka, and see how that goes. And then if it's becoming a walkover, I may switch over to Kudermetova Kasatkina. Krejčíková Martic could be an interesting fight, but I think the day really kickstarts when we get to Badosa Sakkari, followed by Pegula and Trevisan, and then followed by Swiatek and Alexandrova. So we're on for a good day of tennis tomorrow, and I'm very happy it's a public holiday in the UK, which means I've got plenty of opportunities to watch. Hopefully you get to catch some of it tomorrow, Vanch. Thank you so much for coming on and talking WTA tennis with me. Been really nice to hear your views on how things have been going in the draw.
Yeah, always great to talk to you, Nick. Really enjoyed it, and this was a pretty thorough recap. So yeah, should be fun to see how the rest of the tournament shapes up.
I'm looking forward to it greatly, and thank you to all of you watching, who've been watching the stream or watching this back. Maybe sorry if this episode's gone a little bit long for you, but I hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe for more Madrid content. John is still on the ground, still sending us great interviews, and we'll have plenty of commentary opportunities tomorrow coming from the Talking Tennis. I don't know about tomorrow, whether we've got any plans for commentary, but during the week, we're going to have some great content coming your way, and we're definitely going to be covering the men's and women's finals. But I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. We will speak to you soon. Have a good evening.
Sure.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.